Welcome to Fireside Giants. My name is Alex with my co-host here, Anthony Rivardo. Today we got a few things on the agenda ranging from Jason McCourty to Isaac Yiadom restructuring and why the second round could potentially be a great fit for the Giants to go offensive line if they want to go best player available. We know John Myers said in his kind of his postseason press conference just a couple days ago, actually on Wednesday, he said specifically that because they signed Kenny Golladay and Adoree Jackson, now they don't have to go with a receiver. They don't have to go with Caleb Farley or Patrick Surtain. They don't have to go with a cornerback. They can kind of sit pretty at 11. They can say, you know what, let's see what comes to us. Let's see what players fall. If there's an elite level talent, let's take we can go best player available. We can get someone that fits our mold. We can get someone that we want to fit a specific position, whether it's Rashawn Slater or Michael Parsons, doesn't really matter. But the idea here is they don't need to fill a spot. They can really go best player available if they want to, and I think that's such a big benefit because it also opens up the idea of trading back if a team's like, hey, let's say it's the Patriots, they're like, let's strike a trade with the Giants. My good buddy Joe Judge and Bill Belichick, they're like, let's strike a trade. This would work out for both of us. We go up, we get our quarterback of choice if one slips, and we'll give you guys a second round pick for your troubles. And that way we move back 4 spots. We still can have a chance at a good player. And we get an extra second-round pick, and we're going to talk about a couple offensive linemen this episode that really fit the bill, that really could help the Giants and start day one for them. So I think that's really special. But Anthony, before we dive into, Jason McCourty and what's going on there, the Giants, the interest, where that's coming from, how are you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing real good. I think this is an interesting, trio of topics that we have, right? I just wrote an article on the second-round offensive guard prospects. I actually love quite a few of them. There's a lot of really talented guys that are going to be available in round 2 for the Giants. Maybe not necessarily guaranteed to be available. 1 or 2 of them might have to fall to us. But either way, even towards the back end of the second round, there's some really solid players that we can take a look at and say, these guys could potentially be starters on our offensive line. So I'm really interested to talk about that. Then, of course, the cornerback situation. I think that's also interesting. Jason McCourty, where would he fit? Why is he getting so much, attention from fans? Why do they want him so bad? But, of course, the Giants are also giving him attention. There's mutual interest. And then Isaac Yiadom, a guy that I'm a lot higher on than most Giants fans. I like Isaac Yiadom a lot. Happy to see him staying around with the Giants. So, a few really nice topics to discuss here, and I'm excited to get into it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And the first one on the agenda is Jason McCourty. And now, I'm pretty sure it was Ryan Dunleavy of the New York Post that stated that there was mutual interest between Jason and the Giants. And as we know, he's a former teammate of Logan Ryan. But not only that, he's also a former player of Joe Judge. Jason McCourty is on the Patriots the last 3 years. Joe Judge being there in 2018, 19, and even further back. So he has experience with Jason McCourty. He knows him. Logan Ryan's played with him in Tennessee back in the day. I think that, or rather the Patriots, and I think it might have been Tennessee. Either way, he has a connection with him. There are strong bonds between these Giants players and coaches with a lot of players they are bringing in. Adoree Jackson and Logan Ryan, good friends. Kenny Golladay and Kyle O'Brien from the Detroit Lions. So they know a lot of these players. They have insider information, especially with COVID and stuff, where they might not have that insider information. They have it now because of the connections. Jason McCourty essentially said, I want to be with a team that wants me, that is going to utilize my skills, that I don't care if I'm helping younger guys develop. Some people think that he will stay in New England, which is totally possible with his brother Devin. They grew up in Nyack, New York, which is where I'm from. So kind of cool little background there. But for the most part, Jason McCourty, he's older. He's like 33 years old, and some might say he's washed, and he probably would be if he was a starting corner, but we don't want him to be a starting corner. We don't want him to be a depth piece, and that's kind of where Isaac Yiadom's situation comes into play. I thought that Isaac Yiadom's contract was only $2.183 million, but apparently he's taken a big pay cut, and he took a pay cut that is pretty significant. He went down from $2.183 million to $1.07 million with $100K guaranteed. So they could cut him easily and not feel bad about it. But he saved them over $1 million in salary. And if they haven't used that already, it's just added to the cap space that they currently have. And they could still say, let's cut Isaac Yiadom, even though I think they like him. I think they think he's a young, he's a former 3rd-round pick. The Giants got him last year from Denver for a 7th-rounder. He's a young corner who has some upside. He can come in and fill in, relatively healthy for the most part. And I think, Anthony, you like Isaac Yiadom, right? You think he's a suitable depth piece, not a starter, but he could get it done, right? You think he could be a good player just to compensate in case Adoree Jackson or Bradbury were to miss any games, knock on wood.
I think he's a great depth piece. A, he knows the scheme. B, he has starting experience. C, he played well above what we expected him to last year. We expected him to get thrashed week in and week out. That wasn't necessarily the case. Yeah, he lost a lot of reps, and he was at times a liability, as we expected him to be. But there were times where he was really solid, and he did a good job man marking the number 2 receiver on the opposing teams, and he did a good job and held his own. That's really all you ask for a guy who's a depth piece. You want them to hold their own. The Giants were just in a terrible situation last year where they were starting depth pieces at a couple spots on their starting lineup. Right, Isaac Yiadom is a depth piece, but he was starting at CB2. He never should have been starting at CB2. We didn't want him starting at CB2, but we didn't have anyone else that could start there in place of him. So when he went out there at CB2, I thought he played really well. I thought he did a good job at CB2. You know, he could have done better, of course, but he's just not the talented starting cornerback that we needed at that position. So ultimately, now we have that. Adoree Jackson is our starting CB2. He is that outside cornerback that can go out there and compete at a high level. Behind him, we just need some solid depth pieces, and I think that Isaac Yiadom is that, because we saw him play last year as a starter. He proved that he was not a starter, but he proved that he has the capability to start in place of somebody if need be, at least in my eyes. That's what I saw from him. This contract is great. It's very cheap. He could still be cut if we end up landing someone better, but I think he's a young guy, still has room to grow, and is still a solid depth piece that can play perfectly behind Adoree Jackson and fill in if, God forbid, Adoree Jackson does get injured. So I want Isaac Yiadom to stick around. Another thing that I mentioned earlier, he knows the scheme. You know, we keep signing random guys, very talented guys, that's great, but I want guys that know the scheme. You know, if someone gets hurt, we need somebody to know exactly what their job is, what their role is, and what they have to do. Isaac Yiadom knows that. This will be his second year playing under Patrick Graham. So I think that he should stick around. I think he earned the opportunity to stick around. I think he earned that right. He played well enough last year to me to where I think that he earned the opportunity to stick around for a second year with the Giants, and I hope he does. And I'm excited to see him be on the Giants hopefully this year. Hopefully he makes the roster. I know they just structured this contract in a way where they could absolutely cut him before the season begins, but I don't think he will be. I don't think he should be. I think he's a solid depth piece. Hopefully we don't have to see him on the field too much, but if we do, I'm pretty confident that he can go out there and play at a decent level.
Look, I hope we never see Isaac Yiadom sniff the field. That's my goal. That's my goal for the Giants. Don't let him on the field. Please, Adoree Jackson, stay healthy. Obviously, all the medicals came back clean, because otherwise they wouldn't have signed him. You know, John Myers said they did extensive medicals for Adoree Jackson and Kenny Galladay to make sure they were 100%. Everything came back good, so I feel pretty confident they're 100% healthy going into next season. And that's really, really exciting, because you don't need Isaac Yiadom. You know, the Giants started off with Corey Ballantyne after week 1. Like, just think about how much of a liability CB2 really was for us last year. Week 1, we had Corey Ballantyne, and week 2, his snaps got slashed by half. He was replaced by an undrafted free agent in Ryan Lewis, who had bounced around to a couple teams coming from Buffalo and then Miami. And then you move to Isaac Yiadom, who you traded a 7th-round pick for in training camp. You know, like a week before the season started. The Giants had it, like, we don't realize how much that CB2 weakness really impacted our defense because of how much money they spent on Adoree Jackson. That should tell you how big of a weakness that really was and how important it was to fix that problem, because now the Giants can go into next season with Patrick Graham saying, let's go back to our man coverage roots. We can blitz more guys. We can send more pressure. And that's going to help us pick up more turnovers, more sacks. It's going to help us scheme a pass rush more efficiently, even if we don't get a big-time pass rusher in the draft, if we just stick with Lorenzo Carter, Oceanic Zimenez, and Ryan Anderson, you know, and Ifeadi Odenigbo, you know, if we stick with those guys, it's going to be okay. We're going to scheme a pass rush. Patrick Graham's going to get it done, I promise you that. It might not be like you have Chase Young and Montez Sweat on the ends, or it might not have you J.J. Watt or Khalil Mack or whatever it might be, but Patrick Graham's devises a very interesting, like, disguised 3-4 coverage scheme, and those disguised coverages are supposed to confuse the quarterback and make him sit in the pocket that one extra second too long trying to figure out what the coverage is to let your guys get to him. That's the whole concept. Like, he's like, we can get coverage sacks if we can disguise the quarterback. And that's kind of what happened to Russell Wilson against Seattle. In that 3-4 scheme, they confused him. They used a lot of spies, oftentimes multiple spies on the same play. We saw it with Carter Coughlin. We saw even Leonard Williams, Blake Martinez, and we saw it with Tay Crowder as well. And what they kind of did was, like, in that 3-4 scheme, they used the disguised coverages, and they kind of just waited until Russell Wilson rolled out of the pocket because he couldn't figure out what was going on around him. He couldn't figure out what the coverages were looking like, which is, like, the first time I've ever seen a quarterback at that level really struggle like that. And then, as Anthony said a couple episodes ago, other teams saw that and started to mimic it, and it worked. They completely shut down Seattle's offense the rest of the year, just disguising the coverages and really putting more pressure on the quarterback, and it worked. It worked to perfection. Patrick Graham figured out how to beat Seattle with not much to work with, and the Giants and somebody in the last episode commented saying, you said the Giants defense didn't have a lot of talent. They did have a lot of talent, but I'll tell you this. They had no CB2 for the most part. Isaac Yiadom, I'm not considering him. I consider him a below-average player that was supplementing a weakness, and it was a very big liability the whole year. We had no pass rush. We had Jabal Shared and Lorenzo Carter on the Jabal Shared and Carter Coughlin on the outside, and we had a whole new coaching staff and schematics. So I will say nobody expected the Giants to be 9th overall in points allowed per game. They blew us all out of the water, and kudos to all those guys for getting it done. But I think with Isaac Yiadom, now we're looking at Jason McCourty. Anthony, what do you think about Jason McCourty? Do you think he'd be a good fit? Do you think that there's reason to believe there's any actual interest there? And why do you think he would be a good fit, and why do you think he wouldn't be a good fit?
Before I get on to Jason McCourty, I quickly want to touch on what you just discussed with the Giants' talent level in 2020. Basically, what we were saying in that last episode, going into the 2020 season, we all thought collectively as a fan base that the Giants' defense was going to suck. We thought it was going to be terrible. We thought there was no talent anywhere except for the couple positions that we just spent big money on. We were wrong, okay? Most fans were wrong. Not even necessarily wrong, but we just saw Patrick Graham get the most out of players who shouldn't have been starting in positions where they should have been starting. Tay Crowder was the last pick in the 2020 NFL Draft and played good football. That is where you go into a season, you say, that's our starting linebacker? This is going to be a bad year. This is terrible. We can't go in the season with that. He got good football out of that guy. Kudos to Patrick Graham. CB2, Isaac Yiadom is our starter. Ryan Lewis is our starter. Corey Ballantyne is our starter. Those are not talented guys. That is a lack of talent. That's what we say when we say there is a lack of talent on this roster. We're talking about positions like that. We're talking about we're starting a rookie 4th-round corner at slot corner, and he played great. We're talking about how we had a lack of talent going into the season. Everyone thought the offense was going to be better. But ultimately, the Giants' defense ended up being the strength of the team, thanks to good coaching, thanks to good development of these players. He got the most out of these players, and he proved that they're actually more talented than we thought they were going into the season. Blake Martinez had a career year. James Bradberry had a career year. Leonard Williams had a career year. Jabril Peppers had a career year. You could say that Julian Love probably had a career year. He played really good football as a utility piece. You could probably say that Dalvin Tomlinson even had a career year. This was actually, he did. He had a career year. Dexter Lawrence had a much better second season and did a rookie season. Talent just developed all over the team. Like, everyone just started playing better because Patrick Graham came to town and the scheme was better, the coaching staff was better. That's not a coincidence. So, we thought going into the season there was a lack of talent. And ultimately, yes, there was, because we still went into this offseason and said we have to patch up CB2. So that's point proven. There was definitely some sort of a lack of talent. But now we patched up that hole, and we know that we have really good pieces because we got a lot out of them in 2020. So we can go into 2021 confidently saying we have a really talented defense. If we add one more piece, this might be arguably the best defense in the league, because it already is one of the best. So we never said there was a lack of talent. We said there was a lack of talent in the beginning of the season, but ultimately by the end of it, everybody developed, and we have stars all over the field now. That's what we love to see. In terms of Jason McCourty, when we talk about depth, right, I just mentioned Julian Love. I love him as a utility piece, a depth piece. He can play strong safety, free safety, slot cornerback, outside cornerback. He can line up wherever you need. When you need a guy to step in and play a specific position when someone's injured, sometimes you need a depth piece who can do that, right? So let's say James Bradberry gets injured. Or James Bradberry, like last season, James Bradberry had COVID, and we really felt the loss of James Bradberry when we played Cleveland. We were like, oh my God, this defense looks atrocious without James Bradberry in our secondary. Let's say in that theoretical situation, if that happened this year, right? Let's say James Bradberry misses a game, and we have Jason McCourty to step in and play in his spot. They have a similar playing type. He has all the experience in the world playing outside corner. He could perfectly fill in for James Bradberry. Plus, Jason McCourty, being a veteran in this league, has a lot of knowledge. He has learned a lot. The Giants are a very young team. All over this defense, we have young guys learning still how to play the NFL game. Jason McCourty can help them with that. He's a great leader. He's a wise mind in football. He would be a nice signing as a depth piece. Personally, I don't think he starts anywhere. I don't think he starts in the slot. I want to see Darnay Holmes continue to develop and start in the slot. I don't think he moves over to safety because we have a lot of talent at safety. Jason McCourty's only role on this team is as a backup cornerback to fill in just in case James Bradberry gets injured, or even if Adoree Jackson gets injured. That's how I see him. If that's how the Giants see him, then go ahead, sign him to a cheap contract for him to fulfill that role. But personally, I don't see it as necessary for the Giants to sign James McCourty, because I think that ultimately you can go into the NFL draft, you can go into round 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, you can find a guy who can maybe fill that role. You can find a guy who's being slept on like Tay Gowan that we interviewed. There's other guys like Thomas Graham out of Oregon or Benjamin St. Juste out of Minnesota. There's some talented mid-round guys that the Giants could target, draft them. They can be that backup cornerback this year and maybe even develop one day into long-term being a starter. So that's what I would prefer to see the Giants do. But if they go get James McCourty and they have him be that backup cornerback who fills in case James Bradbury gets injured, I'm okay with it as long as it's a cheap contract. Go ahead. I think depth is ultimately one of the most important things in football. You look at the best teams in the league, they have depth. The Giants need more depth. So if they want to go out and make a depth signing, I'm all for it. Let's get more depth. Let's prepare for the worst and hope for the best in 2021.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to Jason McCourty, I'll tell you this. I don't think I'm not dying to sign Jason McCourty. You know, I'm not like dying for him to be part of the Giants. I don't think, you know, with Isaac Yiadom, he's not a vast upgrade over Isaac Yiadom at this point. He's 33 years old. You know, as Anthony mentioned, he's kind of traveling into the slot more these days because of his age. He can't really be that physical boundary outside receiver last season. He finished, let's see, I know Anthony was just talking about this before, but he finished with 401 outside snaps, which is actually a lot, and then 112 slot corner snaps. It was a little bit more even in 2019. It does show he has some versatility. He also played 46 snaps at free safety, so I do like the fact that he is able to play multiple positions. And I think that versatility makes him a little bit more attractive. But again, I don't even know how much money he would want. You know, he might want $5-6 million per season. Like, that's definitely a possibility. But for the most part, I'm not dying for him to be a part of the team. I think we have Logan Ryan. We have those guys that can help. The last contract he signed was a 2-year, $10 million deal. So actually, you know what? I think he might fall in like the $3 million range, which is, you know, the money they just saved from Isaac Yiadom. It might be worth it. I just don't know, Anthony. Do you think that the upside of Isaac Yiadom is worth investing in? Because Jason McCourty might be a 1 year and done. Isaac Yiadom might be a long-term depth piece and a really cheap one at that. What do you think?
That's exactly how I feel. Isaac Yiadom, A, he knows the scheme, so I think he's more prepared to be a depth piece this year. B, he's young, and he at one point was a third-round pick, I believe, and then the Giants acquired him. Like, he's a talented young player who is a good depth piece, and he could be a long-term depth piece with room to grow. I like Isaac Yiadom. His contract is cheap. It's only 1 year, but Jason McCourty absolutely would just be a 1-year deal as well. So I would like to see the Giants keep Isaac Yiadom around long-term as a backup. I think that's a good idea.
Right, so let's move on to the offensive line portion of this, because I think that's a little bit more interesting. Now, we all know the Giants need offensive line support. Everyone keeps saying and hammering down, does not matter if you have Kenny Golladay, does not matter if you have John Ross, doesn't matter if you have Saquon, doesn't matter if you have Sterling Shepard, Dante Pettis, Darius Slayton, Daniel Jones, does not matter if Daniel Jones doesn't have time in the pocket, or Saquon Barkley doesn't have blocking. I 100% agree with you. Now, as John Mara said, you can sit pretty at 11 and pick best player available because the second round has a ton of interior offensive linemen to choose from. And just to list a couple of them off, I would argue, you know, Wyatt Davis is one that could fall. You have, let's see here, you have Creed Humphrey. You have Landon Dickerson, who I'm not the biggest fan of because of the injury history, because, you know, Gettleman's a proponent of, like, and it's kind of ironic because he said this and then, like, half his players they just brought in, like, 10 players who were coming off injured seasons, but he was like, injured players stay injured. You know, that's essentially what he said. And there's another guy, Alex Leatherwood, who projects as an offensive tackle but can move interior. I'm okay with that. Ben Cleveland might be a third-round selection, not a second-round guy. Average athleticism, but strong. He's a freaking hog molly. The guy beats the hell out of people. Dylan Raddens, a little bit smaller, is projected as an offensive tackle. I think he's a pretty athletic tackle that can kind of pull in the running game. I think he'd be a good power gap kind of offensive lineman, but I think his pass pro needs a little work. I think he has a torn ACL in his history. Liam Eichenberg from Notre Dame, another good name there. So right off the bat, you have 3, 4, 5, 6. You have 7 options in the offensive guard category that you can look at in the second and third round even. I think that's totally fine, Anthony. Like, I think the Giants could easily go with a guy like Micah Parsons, pass on whatever, Sean Slater. I mean, it's hard to pass on him, but if they wanted to do that, they could go with a wide receiver. They can go with Micah Parsons. They can go with, you know, I don't know, anybody else. and then go with an offensive guard in the second round, then I would feel pretty confident about it. Because I think right guard is basically our biggest hole. I think Will Hernandez is our starter at left guard. I think you have Andrew Thomas, you got Nick Gates. I think the Matt Peart and Nate Solder rotation at right tackle is pretty much cemented. I think they feel good about that. But right guard's the one that really stands out to me. If Wyatt Davis fell to them at 42, I think it would be a home run selection. What do you think?
You know how I feel about Wyatt Davis. If he's there at 42, he is a home run selection. And you know how I feel about what the Giants should do in round one. Best player available. Don't force yourself to draft a position of need. The Giants don't have to draft a guard at 11. They don't have to draft an edge rusher at 11. They don't have to draft a tackle at 11. If a player of a high talent falls to them, whether that be a Jalen Waddle, who a lot of people have as their number one receiver in this class, he's the number 3 prospect on the Draft Network's entire draft board. If he were to fall to 11, they should take him. He is the best player on the board. The Giants are in a position now where they can take the best player available, and they absolutely should. Whether that's Micah Parsons, Jalen Waddle, Devontae Smith, Rashawn Slater, Penei Sewell is a long shot, but if he's there, go best player available. That's what the Giants should do. Round 2, then you can maybe start to look at going for a position of need. But honestly, I think that if the Giants draft a guard in round 2, there's a good chance they're going best player available. Because if Wyatt Davis falls to them, he might be the best player on that board because he is a really, really good offensive guard that can start day one. He has comparisons to Kevin Zeitler, so he will be a scheme fit. Okay, Kevin Zeitler was really good for the Giants for the couple of years that he was here. Wyatt Davis is really solid in pass protection, and he's got a nice mean streak in the run game. I've seen him throw a lot of pancakes. If you go watch his film, he is cooking up pancakes like he works at IHOP, but he's also really nimble and solid in pass protection. I like Wyatt Davis a lot out of Ohio State. But there's a few other guys that the Giants can look at. Creed Humphrey, traditionally a center. He played center throughout his collegiate career. Left-handed center, which is really interesting. But a lot of people think that he can move to guard in the NFL. And if he can, man, this guy is really, really talented. He had a 5.09 second 40-yard dash at his pro day. 33-inch vertical at 6'4", 312 pounds, and 29 reps on the bench. The dude he tested physically incredible. He ran a quicker short shuttle at his pro day, 4.46 seconds, than Jerry Jeudy did at his NFL Combine, 4.53 seconds. Think about how insane that is. Jerry Jeudy is like skinny, fast, one of the quickest route runners in the NFL. Ran a 4.53. Creed Humphrey, 6'4", 312 pounds, ran a 4.46. That's nuts. Athletically, physically, he's incredible. He allowed only 28 pressures over the last 3 years on nearly 1,300 pass blocking snaps. Excellent pass protecting center. I think the Giants are comfortable at center with who they've got in Nick Gates. I like him a lot. I've been a big fan of his since even 2 seasons ago. But Creed Humphrey, if you want to move him over at guard, I'm all for that. I think he's a really talented player that could fit in well. Now there's another guy who we're actually going to be interviewing next week. Stay tuned for that. Quinn Miners. This is a guy who was shot up draft boards. This was a guy who was looked at as an undrafted prospect.
Player. Crazy.
Yeah, D3 prospect. Has never faced pro competition until he goes to the Senior Bowl and dominates every single pro competition.
He trains with Slater too, by the way.
He dominated everyone. He trains with Rashawn Slater. That's a good point as well. At his pro day, he surpassed the 90th percentile historically among interior offensive linemen in the 40-yard dash, the vertical, the broad jump, the short shuttle, and the 3-cone. So another guy, an extreme athlete on the offensive line, another guard prospect. He moved over to center at the Senior Bowl, played really, really well at center. A lot of people think that he might be better as a center in the NFL just because he dominated at center at the Senior Bowl. But he also took snaps at guard, and he is too quick. I think he's really quick, and I think you want to put him in that guard role where he's out there pulling and lead blocking. Quinn Miners is talented. Yeah, he's a D3 prospect. Went to Wisconsin Whitewater. You ever heard of that? Probably not. But you're going to know about it now after Quinn Miners goes in the second round of this draft because, yeah, he was supposed to be undrafted. He's in the second round. He's a second-round lock now is what every analyst and scout and insider is saying. He's going in the second round. He's in the PFF top 50. He's really high up on Daniel Jeremiah's board. He's in pretty much everybody's top 50 now. He's going to go in the second round, and it could be an absolute steal. He murdered every defensive lineman he faced at the Senior Bowl. It was so impressive. He just stepped in. No one knew who he was. He took over. Love that. He's got great character. Can't wait to talk to him next week. I'm really excited for the interview. Hopefully you guys are too. Make sure you stay tuned to that. Should be, I think, next Tuesday. Really exciting. But yeah, Quinn Miners, I think, is a perfect fit. He's actually been mocked to the Giants a lot in recent mock drafts. I think he would be a perfect fit for the Giants in the second round.
Look, he's actually a perfect power gap scheme lineman because he's very agile, very quick. He's 320 pounds, about 6'4", and he's good bend, like very good center of gravity. And he's underrated power. Like Anthony said, he went to the pro day and kicked ass. Like, the guy dominated every day in practice. He dominated in the game. Like, he's been shooting up draft boards as a D3 prospect who dominated the small school. And, you know, I don't know how he got missed by a lot of these big schools, because obviously he's extremely talented, and he went in and crushed D2, D1 prospects with no problem. But you know, this is a guy who has a chip on his shoulder. You know, he's a guy who's coming from a no-name school, a D3 program where I don't even know how he got found, and he's coming in saying, you know, I have everything to prove and nothing to lose. You know what I mean? Nobody expects me to be here. All I'm going to do is kick your ass and see what happens. And he's done just that. We're going to interview him next week, see what he has to say. I hope he's mean. I hope he yells at us, because that's why I like my offensive lineman. But no, honestly, he looks like a great guy. I saw him training with Rashawn Slater, a video of that. And his reps looked just as smooth as Slater's, by the way. Like, he looked just as good as him, which was very, very... He was a little bit shorter, a little bit smaller than Slater. But he was just as agile, just as quick, just as athletic, just as powerful. And that's what stood out to me. And I said, that's interesting, you know, because if you have a good offensive line coach like Robert Sale, and they got Pat Flaherty coming back, the Giants do, you might have something there. You know, you might have something in Quinn Miners who might be able to develop with your scheme. I think he's going to be, I don't think he'll start day one, but I think he'll be a starting offensive lineman in the NFL by the end of his rookie season, which I'm okay with. You know, I'm okay with drafting Quinn Miners. I don't think he'll be a second-round pick. I think he'll be a third-round pick, because people are going to be scared of that D3 you know, factor. I think he'll be a third round pick rather. I'm sorry. And I think that drafting him there and having compete with Shane Lemieux at right guard would be a good competition battle. I think that would bring out the best in both of them personally. I'd be okay with that. And, you know, that really allows you some leeway to go out and get two immediate playmakers. You can get an immediate playmaker in the second round. Rondale Moore might be there, 42. Terrace Marshall with a gift from the football gods might be there. Likely not. Nico Collins from Michigan could be there. There's going to be a ton of players available at 42. Amari Rogers could be one. Elijah Moore maybe, you know, from Missouri, or rather Mississippi. Ole Miss, I think. I might be bugging. I think it's Ole Miss. You know, might be there. So there's a lot of players in this draft that can make immediate impacts. The Giants don't necessarily need to go offensive lineman in the first two rounds. I would prefer them to, but if they got a guy like Quinn Miners in the third round, I'd be ecstatic. I know Anthony would be as well. But is there any other offensive lineman that you want to touch on before we wrap up here, Anthony?
Yeah, I'm going to throw one more name out there. This is kind of a guy who's connected with the Giants because he grew up a Giants fan. Landon Dickerson. This is a guy out of Alabama. He was the most valuable center in college football last year, according to Pro Football Focus. He was incredible, but he's got a terrifying injury history. He's torn his ACL twice. He had a terrible ankle injury that cost him a lot of time on the field. But when he's on the field, he was the best center in college football. He is phenomenal. A lot of people think that he can move to guard. A lot of people think he should move to guard. He's really talented. I think that he's an option for the Giants. He's not my favorite option for the Giants. I like Quinn Miners a lot more, but he's really good, and he could be somebody that the Giants look into, especially with that connection, knowing that he grew up a Giants fan. The Giants have been connected to a lot of people who grew up Giants fans or grew up in the New Jersey area, or, you know, went to Rutgers, you know, like Logan Ryan, Jabril Peppers. So that connection means at least a little bit of something, I think, for the Giants, especially Landon Dickerson, Alabama, Joe Judge, Alabama. There's a couple connections to make here. So keep an eye on Landon Dickerson. I don't necessarily think he's the best fit for the Giants in round two, but he's definitely an option that can be considered. So keep him on, you know, keep an eye out for him, even though that injury history is very, very scary. I do think that he's a pretty solid player. Oh, and he's played multiple positions, which Joe Judge loves. We love versatility. He's played actually every single position on the offensive line at some point or another in college. He just sat and played really dominant football at center in his final season. So keep an eye on him. I think he's really talented. I just, you know, the injuries scare me.
Yeah, the injuries are my biggest fear. I like his play. I don't like the injuries. And those, you know, when you get to the NFL level, those guys are stronger, bigger, faster. People are falling all around you. We've seen, how many times have we seen someone fall on somebody's ankle, you know, in the offensive lineman category. So I think Landon Dickerson's a great player. I am not taking a chance on him because of the injury history. That scares the crap out of me, especially since we just brought in Adoree Jackson and Kenny Golladay coming off injuries. Kind of worrisome. I'm not in the field. There's going to be some other options available. You could kick Alex Leatherwood inside. Another guy, I said Ben Cleveland before. I think he'd be a good scheme fit for us. He can, he's a good power gap scheme, run blocker. He's good at getting vertical. He's nasty. He's a hog molly. I like guys like that. He's that nasty demeanor. That's Nick Gates. That's even Andrew Thomas is a finisher. That's Will Hernandez, nasty freaking guys, and that's what Dave Gettleman likes. So Ben Cleveland, it makes sense. I think they're giving Dave Gettleman and Rob Sale like most of the offensive line say in terms of like who they're gonna pick, and I think Ben Cleveland matches up well with what the Giants are looking for. He's a nasty guy. If you just look at his picture, he looks like he hacks wood for fun. So that's kind of an interesting kind of thing. I think he might like to do as a hobby. But nonetheless, guys, I think that wraps up our segments today, talking about Jason McCourty, Isaac Yiadom's restructure, and a couple offensive linemen the Giants could look for in the second round. But really appreciate you guys tuning into Fireside Giants. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Make sure to subscribe below on YouTube. Turn on the notifications for Apple and Spotify. And also hit up our TikTok, Fireside Giants. Building that really well. It's growing fast. We got a lot of great content you might not find on Twitter. And I'm doing a lot of narrations of other players and some clips and stuff like that. So really cool there. Bringing another factor to TikTok that I haven't seen. So I think might be interesting. So guys, I hope you enjoyed, and we'll catch you guys on the next video.
TVSO.